You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called
The Wonderful World of Wardini Books.
And as always, my pleasure to have in the studio the wonderful Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. How you been going? Good?
Yeah, very well. Yep.
Excellent. And your business is going through the roof, I hope?
Yeah, we do all right.
Yeah. And you can't be going into a bookstore. I was just lamenting the other day that so many people now read on Kindles or on their phone. You can't beat the real deal, can you?
No, and I think that a lot of people that read on Kindles also read a real book.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
good on them.
So I think they work side by side quite well.
They do, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, we've got three more, what do I know? We've got three more fabulous books coming our way today. And the first one is called Buy Me Love.
Yes. So, 2 New Zealand books out of the 3 today. So this one, Buy Me Love, is by Greg Brooke. And I had an email from Greg a few weeks ago. And he's a bookseller down in Dunedin. You know, and he said, I sell books by your booksellers. Do you want to give mine a go?
Yeah.
And I read the information that he gave me. And I thought, that sounds actually like a lot of fun. So he set his book down in a town called Bridgetown in the South Island, which I presume is fictional. I haven't looked that up. And it's a town that gets along well. They rub along well, and you know they've got a mayor of the town, and they've got the local vicar who's moved back into the area after growing up there, and there's an information centre where the woman that runs it just spends most of her time trying not to give anybody any information. You know, she's quite a comical character, and her husband's the local police officer, and he's rarely got much to do, you know, and they rub along all right. And then an American businessman moves into the village because he just falls in love with the place. He's travelling through and he just loves it, and he decides to buy the big old property up on the hill there. And then when we meet him, he's quite elderly and he's watching the comings and goings from the hill through his telescope, and he's got his bloke that works for him, his factotum, who all the villagers called the Fat Totem because he's quite a large man. And it turns out that when he dies, he bequeaths every single person in the village $4 million each.
I read about that somewhere.
Probably on my Facebook page.
Yes,
I've been whittering on about it because I'm so impressed. And then, of course, what a beautiful place to start a story, because money corrupts, money enables,
yes, it does.
you know, and so that's where Greg goes with this book. But he tells it in such a humorous tone. It's got a really, it's doing a lot of deep stuff in a very light way. So it was just a really entertaining read. So
is it stories within stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's also like a kind of a love triangle. So the vicar that I mentioned, aforementioned, he grew up in that village, and another chap comes back to visit his parents and gets caught up in it, and then the third member of their little tribe, when they were younger, she's been working for the mayor doing something, you know, some research thing, and they both fancied her years ago, but neither of them ever got round to making a move, and she just eventually got sick of waiting for one of them to say something and buggered off, you know, and married somebody else, and that didn't go so well. And so that's a whole plot in itself. Yeah, so there's all sorts going on, and it is, you know, like it does in a town.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Sort of like Midsummer Murders.
It's got a bit of that kind of feel to it.
I love those programs. You should interview that guy on your program Made in New Zealand.
I think that would be a great idea. We'd probably have to do it by phone because he is in Dunedin.
No, we can do that. And your next book is another Kiwi book, like you mentioned. It's called Folded.
Yes, and this is by Tina Clough, and she is a Napier author, so she's a lot more accessible to us.
It's a book all about origami by the look of it.
It's not all about origami, but origami does play a part in it. So this is the third in a series of crime novels featuring Hunter Grant and Dow, who is... In the first book, Hunter finds Dow. He's out in the bush with his dog, doing, you know, bushy things, and
that's a good description of it. I love it.
Whatever blokes do in the bush, and he finds this he thinks is a child that he's found that's dead, but it's not. It's this young woman who's escaped from captivity, and anyway, so that they sort out that problem in the first novel. There's a second novel, and in the third novel, Hunter and Dow are now married, and she's not as young as she looks, don't worry, everything's fine. And in this one, they have been approached by Hunter's sister, whose friend has a problem. That a friend of hers has gone missing, and the friend Linda had been picking up these beautiful little origami things that someone had been dropping from a building, and they're lovely. But then upon opening them, there's tiny, tiny writing in there that says, "Help, I'm being kept."
Oh, messages.
Yeah, captive in, apartment 403. And she goes to the police, and the police are a bit rubbish about it and don't do much. And so they approach Hunter and Dow to investigate. And the things that they uncover are just incredible. So the pace of this story, it starts with a hiss and a roar because you've got a woman that's abducted and put in this apartment, and there's a whole story around what's going on there and why, and all the comings and goings. And then Dow has always been this most amazing character in that she's very straightforward, and she was held in captivity and educated herself as a young girl growing up. And she has an extremely sharp mind, and she's very inquiring and very direct. And in this book, she gets a big section all to herself because Hunter, for one reason or another that I'm not going to spoil the plot for you, is taken out of the picture for a little while. And he says to her, "Don't do anything stupid."
Yeah.
But she doesn't, because she's so smart, she doesn't promise specific things. Well, I didn't promise that I wouldn't do this.
Yes.
So she furthers the investigation herself.
Good one.
And that is the big strength of this book.
And is it a story set in a town that we might identify with in New Zealand? Or is
Yeah,
it
it's
set-
in Auckland.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so it's all in Auckland. So a lot of I'm presuming that the landscapes are all,
Oh, great.
accurate. I don't know Auckland all that well myself, but it does feel like a New Zealand city novel.
Now, I've
Yeah.
said this to you before, but over the last year in particular, you've brought a lot of books in that are by Kiwi authors. Is that
Yeah.
because we're going from strength to strength in the writing department?
Yeah, I think we always have gone from strength to strength. But I get contacted quite a lot by writers, and you have to sensitively sort the wheat from the chaff,
Yes.
which sounds like quite harsh, doesn't it? But, not
They're
everybody
not
can
all great,
write.
are they? Yeah.
So the ones that I bring to you are the ones that have,
Absolutely.
I felt, got a merit.
How
Yes.
would you rate Folded out of 10, and who's it going to appeal to?
This is going to appeal to you Jack Reacher fans, that
yes,
want a
I
real
like that.
fast-paced, there's a crime there are clues, there are characters that have to break the rules to get
Yes, the job
the
done.
justice, absolutely. So, recommend for Jack Reacher fans and, that kind of thing.
Good one. And our last book is Lucky's.
Yeah, which I think we've spoken about before, but I'm in the privileged position of being able to interview the author, Andrew Pipos, even though he's in Australia. With the power of the internet,
Yes, indeed.
we're doing a Facebook Live interview with Andrew for half an hour on Sunday, this Sunday.
Now, you've done quite a few of those, so if we want to see
Yeah.
them, the back ones, how do we do that?
You can find them on our Facebook page, so they get recorded and they stay on the Facebook page. So you don't have to scroll through. I think there's a section where you can just click on videos, and they're in there. So Andrew's written Lucky's. It's his debut novel, even though he's a journalist and a creative writer. He's well qualified to be writing this kind of thing. And it's set in Australia, and it follows the fortunes of Lucky Malios, who was an American Greek soldier in the Second World War, and he gets stationed in Australia. And ends up falling in love with a Greek-Australian girl and staying there. And her father, Achilles, who is the most amazingly weird, bizarre, passionate, violent character, he's got a restaurant. And then Lucky takes that over and he creates a chain of restaurants. And it's massively successful, and it becomes like Australian icon chain of restaurants, Greek-Australian restaurants. But then, over the years, it just crashes, and a fire happens, and then a tragedy happens, and that's the end of his dynasty. And we meet Lucky when he's desperate to get back on the horse and open another restaurant. He's not going to give up, even though he's now quite elderly. And you get his story as a young man, and all the way through about what's happened with Lucky. And you get the story of Emily, who's a young woman, a journalist in the UK, and she's got hold of this story. What happened to the Lucky's chain? And she wants to come out to Australia and report on it. But she's got a hidden agenda, Ken. There's something going on with her, a connection between her family and Lucky's family. So she's not telling any of her journalist bosses about that, but she's got fish to fry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating story, and it's quite the Australian Greek epic, So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Andrew and finding out about his background, because Andrew Pipos, he is also Greek-Australian and grew up in that kind of environment. So
Easy plot to follow in Lucky's?
yeah, I mean it is a very easy book to read. It's got this very flowing narrative and lots of characters and lots of stuff going on. And then what I want to ask Andrew about, these quite sort of bizarre things, like at one point a horse. Like there's a big sign up in the restaurant saying no animals in the restaurant, and somebody comes in on a horse. And that doesn't end well.
And has that book got a feel-good ending?
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, because there's a lot of tragedy in it. Because all stories have arcs and peaks and troughs. But with this one, I think Lucky is just such a darling of a person that there's a lot of heart in it.
Do you come across many books, and you read a lot? Do you come across many books that you wish wouldn't end? That could just keep going because they're so good. Are those books rare?
No, they're not. No, because there are so many books out there. You've just got to search and you've got to find the gems. And I suppose that's why you come to a bookseller and say, I want to read something a bit like this, and then that bookseller puts you in touch with that gem.
Good on you, Lou. As always, my pleasure to chat with you. You look after yourself. We'll talk to the same time, same place next week.
Lovely. Thanks, Ken.